It affects me in the sense that I get really stiff, I get really rigid, I slow down, I become like an 82-year-old woman.
Parkinson's is put down as the old man's disease, which it is not.
People would never dream or look at me and go, yeah, I bet she's taking 41 tablets a day to be able to do that. Not a clue.
I don't want to accept I've got a neurological disorder. It wasn't in my game plan.
Young Parkinson's needs to be dealt with very differently. If we've got 30 or 40 years to live with this condition, sooner or later the meds are going to stop working.
I was pregnant at the time and I realised that when I was driving, my left arm and my left leg were a bit heavy and non-responsive.
Mum of two, Shamsa, first noticed signs of Parkinson's when she was 28. Since then, the disease has had a big impact on her life.
It affects me in the sense that I get really stiff, I get really rigid, I slow down, I become like an 82-year-old woman you call Ethel, and it's such I age like massively, and it's almost like a rigor mortis sets in, like when you die, and it's really, everything just becomes harder. Like making a cup of tea is the equivalent to climbing a mountain, whereas 5 seconds ago, before when medication was working, I could make a cup of tea with my eyes closed.
Every day, Shamsa faces her biggest challenge of all, looking after her two children, Zain and Kinza.
Being a mum with Parkinson's is really, really hard, because being a mum, full stop, is hard. It's like one of the hardest, most undervalued jobs, and any mother will tell you that. And then being a mum who has stop-start fluctuations is really hard, because children have a real propensity for instant gratification. You can't say, I'll give you your juice in 5 minutes, or if they wet themselves, you can't say, I'll change your nappy in 5 minutes, because you can't like delay things. You feel guilty. Sometimes when you're really stiff and really rigid and your child's upset, you can't give them the same kind of cuddle that you'd give them if you were fluid. I think it's made me a little bit more grateful for the little things. So if I can get my son or daughter to school and pick them up, that's like a massive achievement, whereas for other parents that might not be such a big deal. People don't understand the level of planning that has to go into it. So for instance, I collect my daughter at 3 o'clock every day, and I'll plan an hour in advance what time I'm going to take the medication. And it's just really, like, sometimes my friends will say, I'll see you in the evening at 7 o'clock, and I just think at 7 o'clock I might be lying on the floor, kind of horizontal, because I can't move.
Shamsa is one of around 6,000 people in the UK who have been diagnosed with young onset Parkinson's. She is now a full-time mum, as her symptoms have forced her to leave her job as a teacher. Heidi Reynolds was also medically retired from her position in the police. She is mentally affected by the condition.
Some of the cognitive problems I have is I have absolutely no concept of time at all. So I have a special clock at home in the kitchen, which is prominently placed, which has actually the day, the time, the month, the year, everything on it for me. We have signs around the house as well, so things to try and keep me focused. So if I'm emptying the dishwasher, get distracted. So go and put something in the dining room, start tidying up the cupboard. Doorbell rings, postman comes, I start chatting to him, and then basically I'll have then made the house look more like it's been burgled than I have actually tidied up. So by having the sign saying, what's your task, what are you focused on, what should you be doing, or what time is it, I'll go, oh yeah, what time? My goodness, it's nearly lunchtime, because I don't get hungry.
Due to the nature of her symptoms, Heidi's condition is often misunderstood.
For me, my issue is I have a lot more hidden symptoms than I do, ones that are sort of overt as such, and that's actually quite difficult because people don't understand so much. I think also because I'm often in sportswear and stuff like that, because I do so much exercise. People have absolutely no idea. People would never dream or look at me and go, yeah, I bet she's taking 41 tablets a day to be able to do that. Not a clue. And you just wouldn't. It's the same issue that I have with, I'm sat here in gym gear now, the amount of times that I've gone into disabled toilets because I have to catheterise 4 times a day, because my bladder muscles, unfortunately, where they sit on the bag of nerves there, my nerves, unfortunately, don't let my brain know that I need to go to the toilet properly, and so they get fuller and fuller, and that's why I need to self-catheterise. And So I have to use the disabled toilets. You come out of there dressed in sports gear, and sadly, people think that you have to be in a wheelchair because they think that's what disability is. And the amount of times that I get comments from people, because again, it's around stereotyping.
These experiences are common for Parkinson's sufferers, with 1 in 10 experiencing hostility in public due to a lack of understanding of the symptoms. Parkinson's presents a variety of symptoms. The most common are tremor, slowness and stiffness, but the symptoms can differ with young onset Parkinson's disease, and charity Spotlight YOPD are campaigning to raise awareness of this.
We'd like to get separate NICE guidelines for YOPD. OrphanNet has concluded that it is a rare disease within its own right. So the symptoms are different, the 3 Ds. There is more drug-induced dyskinesia, there's more depression, and there's more dystonia, which is stiffness, and that stiffness and cramping is quite painful.
And those with YOPD are fighting back to raise their profile.
Today we're holding a boxing event, an open day boxing event for people with young onset Parkinson's disease. The message really is basically this isn't just an old man's disease.
For 10 years I didn't know what was actually happening to me, and then it got to the stage where it was unbearable. My life was falling apart. They told me I had Parkinson's, I denied it. YOPD is absolutely overlooked. Parkinson's is put down as the old man's disease, which it is not.
It's hoped that raising awareness will help young sufferers with their fight for new treatments.
Young Parkinson's needs to be dealt with very differently. If we've got 30 or 40 years to live with this condition, sooner or later the meds are going to stop working. So you've got to come up with a different option. Now, how many different options can you have? You've got 40 years. And actually, you know, the initial thing, whether it's dopamine agonists or whether it's levodopa, you're on that for, 8 quite successfully, maybe longer. I mean, it depends, disease progression changes.
For GP Claire, who was diagnosed 9 months ago, progression is a worrying thought, as she is at the very start of her Parkinson's journey.
You have no idea how rapidly it will progress. You know it will progress. I mean, it's not going to get, it's unlikely to stay stationary. Just the other night, I was just burst into tears and, crying on the sofa because you just think, I really wish this wasn't happening. So I don't want to accept I've got a neurological disorder. It wasn't in my game plan. But, it can have a lot worse. The first few patients I saw who have Parkinson's-related symptoms was particularly challenging, and having to, keep my stuff together so that I can keep don't burst into tears whilst they're in the room, and then just sobbing to myself for 10 minutes after the patient's left. The shaking is quite difficult. I don't necessarily want to tell I don't want to tell my patients I've got Parkinson's because I'm slightly worried how they will see me differently. So I'm trying to hide it. I'm somebody who's always pushed myself. I want to do the best. I want to make the best positive change to population health as I can. I have grand plans. I have had grand plans, and when I first got diagnosed, I thought I had to put all that on hold.
There's hope for Claire that she'll be able to continue working in the future as research for new treatments is being done every day.
Parkinson's disease, it occurs because of loss of brain cells or neurons that produce a chemical called dopamine deep in the movement part of the brain called the substantia nigra. And we know from previous research that a dark pigment called neuromelanin is found in areas of the brain only where there are neurons that produce this dopamine and noradrenaline. So that's why it's of research interest to us. So far we've been successfully able to show that the substantia nigra looks lighter with less neuromelanin in someone with Parkinson's disease versus healthy controls. If we can use research like this and technology like this, like MRI, to not just identify progression of the disease but also quantify progression of the disease, that information can act as future drug targets to come up with future therapies.
Until new treatments are discovered, those who are facing a future with Parkinson's are remaining positive.
Don't be scared, don't be afraid, it's not the end of the world. You can still have a really meaningful life with Parkinson's.
At least I get to have a life. Haven't got run over by a bus. And that could still happen tomorrow, so I'd rather not waste today worrying.
It doesn't matter whether it's now, whether I'm in a wheelchair in 40 years' time, 10 years' time, whatever. It doesn't matter. it can't touch my soul and who I am as a person, and that's the bottom line.